The grid does not die quietly. It screams before it goes silent. In the initial 72 hours following a total systemic collapse, the electromagnetic spectrum will be a chaotic graveyard of panic. Millions of desperate signals will flood the airwaves, terrified citizens screaming into cell phones that no longer connect, emergency transponders bleeding automatically until their batteries fail, and the unencrypted chatter of unprepared survivor groups giving away their positions. This is the noise of extinction. Your first tactical mandate is not to join that chorus, but to embrace the silence doctrine. You must understand that in a post-law environment, a signal is a target. If you transmit, you are painting a bullseye on your shelter. The amateur seeks connection, the professional seeks concealment. Survival is a brutal mathematical calculation where the variable of visibility must remain at zero until you control the equation. You must accept that the cell towers are monoliths to a dead age. They are not coming back. The satellites may still orbit, but the ground stations are dark. You are now operating in a communicative vacuum where the only laws are physics and line of sight. Do not attempt to broadcast. Do not turn on a radio to transmit. Listen, monitor. Gather intelligence from the noise of the dying world while remaining a ghost. The silence is your armor. Only when you've established a perimeter and identified threats can you begin to implement the first layer of communication, which requires no electricity and leaves no electronic footprint. This is the visual layer. Way 1 is visual signaling protocols, the most primitive yet secure method of local coordination. You will revert to the heliograph. A simple signal mirror, properly aimed, can flash a blinding lumen of sunlight across 10 miles of open terrain. It is silent, instant, and impossible to intercept unless the enemy is directly in the beam's path. You do not flash randomly. You establish a challenge and pass rhythm. 2 flashes to query, 1 flash to confirm. If the rhythm is wrong, the target is hostile. At night, this evolves into directional light discipline. You will use red-filtered tactical lights shielded by a tube to narrow the beam into a tight cone. This prevents light spill that alerts peripheral observers. You signal only to the specific degree of the compass where your receiver is waiting. Passive visual signaling allows you to communicate status without being present. You will utilize chemical markers and physical placement codes. A strip of blue cloth tied to the southern face of a mile marker post indicates a safe route. A pile of stones arranged in a triangle at a trail junction screams danger or ambush ahead. These are dead letter boxes for the eyes only. They require no batteries, emit no RF signature, and mean nothing to an untrained scavenger. You are building a language of objects. If you cannot see the receiver, you do not exist to them. This creates a closed loop of trust bounded strictly by the horizon. This is the only way to survive the initial purge. Technology is a crutch that will eventually snap. When the batteries bleed out and the circuitry corrodes, you are left with the only 2 assets that cannot be jammed or deactivated: biology and physics. The survivor who relies solely on stockpiled electronics is merely delaying their silence. The survivor who masters the biological layer ensures continuity when the screens go dark. You must build systems that function when the grid is a memory. This brings us to the immediate tactical reality of non-visual short-range coordination, where line of sight is broken by ruins or dense foliage. This is the domain of acoustic networks. Way 2 demands that you abandon the human voice. Speech is a liability. It is distinct, easily identified, and carries emotional panic. You will replace speech with percussion and tone. In a dense urban ruin or a forest canopy, a whistle blast cuts through ambient noise sharper than a shout. You will adopt a strict whistle protocol for tactical movement. 1 sharp blast means halt. 2 blasts mean advance. A continuous trill signals contact front. This allows a team to maneuver in complete synchronization without ever revealing their specific linguistic identity. For static defense, you utilize percussive signaling. Striking a hollow log or a suspended metal pipe creates a resonant sound that travels further than a yell, but blends into the background of a collapsing infrastructure. You establish a rhythm, a heartbeat code. 3 strikes, a pause, 2 strikes. If the perimeter guard hears the wrong rhythm return, the safety is off. This is primitive, yes, but it is unhackable. However, sound and sight are limited by distance. For the transfer of complex intelligence, maps, manifests, and long-form strategic orders, you must revert to the oldest, highest bandwidth network in human history, the physical courier. Way 3 is the runner and the dead drop system. Do not underestimate the data density of a human being carrying a notebook or a micro SD card. A single runner can transport terabytes of data across 20 miles of hostile terrain in a way that no radio can match without interception. But the runner is a high-value asset, and their exposure must be minimized. You do not send them to a handshake meeting. Meetings are ambushes waiting to happen. Instead, you utilize dead drops. You select a location that is mundane and structurally permanent, a loose brick in a retaining wall, a hollow beneath a specific park bench. The runner deposits the intelligence package and leaves a visual indicator nearby to signal that the drop is hot. The receiver retrieves it hours later. The 2 parties never see each other. They never exist in the same space-time coordinates. This compartmentalization ensures that if the runner is captured, they cannot betray the location of the receiver because they do not know who the receiver is. This is the discipline of asynchronous communication. It requires patience, but patience is the currency of the survivor. You are trading speed for security, a necessary exchange when a single leak means total liquidation. You are now stepping onto the electronic battlefield. This is where the careless die. Once you depress the push-to-talk button on a radio, you are no longer a survivor. You are a beacon of electromagnetic energy radiating out in all directions at the speed of light. The silence you cultivated in the visual and acoustic layers is broken. Therefore, you must treat radio transmission not as conversation, but as a weapon system. You fire a transmission only when the target is acquired, and the necessity is absolute. This brings us to Way 4. UHF, VHF simplex operations commonly executed with the ubiquitous Baofeng UV5R or consumer-grade walkie-talkies. You must strip away the marketing lies of 30-mile range printed on blister packs. In a post-infrastructure world, repeaters are dead. You are operating in simplex mode, radio to radio, point to point. Physics dictates your reach. On UHF, your signal is strictly line of sight. If you cannot see the horizon, your signal cannot reach it. In an urban canyon, concrete absorbs your voice. In a dense forest, water-filled leaves scatter it. You are realistically fighting for 1 to 3 miles of connectivity. To extend this, you must seek elevation. High ground is no longer just a tactical advantage for shooting. It is a necessity for comms. The commander with the highest antenna controls the flow of information. Security in this layer is often misunderstood, leading to fatal confidence. You will see settings labeled privacy codes or CTCSS-DCS. Do not be fooled. These are not encryption. They do not scramble your voice. They act merely as a filter, preventing your radio from unmuting for unwanted signals. Anyone scanning the frequency without a tone set will hear every word you say with crystal clarity. You are speaking into the open air, Because you cannot encrypt the signal on cheap hardware, you must encrypt the message. You must develop internal brevity codes. Sector 4 is compromised, tells an eavesdropper everything. Condition black at alpha tells them nothing unless they possess your code book. The greatest threat you face when transmitting is direction finding. A hostile force with 2 cheap radios and a directional Yagi antenna can triangulate your position within minutes if you keep the channel open. To survive, you must minimize your time on target. Keep transmissions under 10 seconds. Use the transmit move doctrine. Never transmit twice from the exact same location if you suspect hostile monitoring. Fire your message, collapse the antenna, and displace immediately. You lower your power output to the minimum necessary wattage to make contact. Blasting 5 watts to reach a receiver 500 yards away is electronic suicide. It pushes your signal miles beyond your target, inviting listeners you do not want. You feather the power to fit the mission. Control the footprint, or the footprint will lead them to you. You have secured your immediate perimeter with silence and established line-of-sight dominance with UHF, but you are still tethered to the physical limitations of point-to-point contact. To survive the mid-range gap, the deadly expanse of 5 to 15 miles of urban ruin or rolling terrain, you must abandon the centralized mindset of the old world. There are no towers to route your call. You must build the infrastructure yourself, but it must be invisible. This is the Ghost Network. Way 5 is the implementation of LoRa mesh networks, specifically utilizing the Mesh-tastic protocol. This is the single most critical technological adaptation for the modern survivor. Unlike voice radios, which require real-time synchronization and massive power to push audio, LoRa transmits tiny packets of data, text messages, and GPS coordinates over a decentralized web of devices. You do not need to reach your final destination directly. You only need to reach the nearest node. Your message hops from device A to device B, then to device C, automatically routing around obstacles until it hits the target. This allows you to construct a persistent unmanned infrastructure. You can deploy solar-powered relay nodes in waterproof cases on high rooftops, water towers, or hilltops. These ghost nodes sit silently, sipping mere milliwatts of battery, waiting to relay your encrypted data. You are not broadcasting your voice. You are sliding text through the noise floor. Because the transmission is digital bursts, it is incredibly difficult for hostile forces to intercept or direction find compared to a continuous voice conversation. You are communicating securely with a team 10 miles away while sitting in a basement using a network that creates itself. This is off-grid texting. It separates the operator from the transmission point, ensuring that even if a node is found and destroyed, the operator remains safe and the network simply heals itself by routing through a different path. While LoRa is your shield, Way 6 is your ear on the wasteland. This is the Citizens Band, the Wild West of the radio spectrum. Operating on 27 MHz, this band is chaotic, noisy, and absolutely insecure. You do not go here to hide. You go here to hunt. In a collapse scenario, the uneducated masses and roving marauder groups will default to CB because the hardware is ubiquitous in older vehicles and easy to scavenge. They will clutter Channel 19 with unprotected chatter about their movements, their loot, and their ambushes. Your tactical principle here is monitoring, not transmission. You set up a base station to scan these frequencies day and night. You treat CB as an open-source intelligence feed. If you hear a convoy coordinating a route on Channel 9, you know exactly where not to be. However, there is one active use case for CB, the mobile convoy. When you are moving 3 trucks down a highway, the roar of engines and the visual signature of vehicles have already compromised your stealth. In this specific high-noise environment, utilizing CB for vehicle-to-vehicle coordination preserves your precious tactical batteries for when you dismount. Use the trash frequencies for trash talk and heavy lifting, but never speak a word of strategic value on the 11-meter band. The enemy is listening, and on CB, they are everywhere. You have mastered the line of sight and woven a digital web across your immediate tactical sector, but you remain blind to the world beyond your horizon. If a hostile army is moving toward your region from 300 miles away, your Baofangs and LoRa nodes will remain silent until the enemy is already breaching your perimeter. To survive strategically, you must break the curvature of the earth. You must turn the atmosphere itself into your infrastructure. This brings us to Way 7, high-frequency radio and the doctrine of near-vertical incident skywave. This is the artillery of communication, heavy, technical, and capable of striking targets that no other system can reach. The tactical problem with standard radio communication is the skip zone. A typical shortwave signal shot at the horizon might bounce off the ionosphere and land 1,000 miles away, skipping over the very region you need to contact, the neighboring county, or the next state over. This dead zone, from 0 to 300 miles, is where regional survival coalitions are formed or broken. To fill this gap, you must stop trying to broadcast out and start broadcasting up. NVIS is a technique where you forcefully direct your radio energy straight up at a near 90-degree angle. It strikes the ionosphere directly above you and rains back down in an omnidirectional shower, covering everything within a regional radius like a radio umbrella. This requires specific engineering. You cannot do this with a whip antenna. You need a horizontal wire dipole cut to the specific frequency length and positioned relatively low to the ground, often lower than a quarter wavelength. This proximity to the Earth forces the signal upward. By mastering NVIS on the lower HF bands, you eliminate terrain masking. A mountain range that blocks VHF is irrelevant to NVIS because your signal is coming from the sky, not across the ground. This allows you to coordinate with allied groups in deep valleys or on the other side of a mountain pass, maintaining a regional command structure when the roads are impassable. Beyond NVIS lies the realm of DX, long-distance skywave. This is your strategic intelligence tool. By changing your frequency and antenna geometry to aim for the horizon, you can bounce signals across oceans. In a total collapse, your local reality is not enough. You need to know if the collapse is global or if aid is organizing on the coast. You need to know if a pandemic wave is sweeping south from the cities. HF radio allows you to monitor international broadcasters, amateur operators, and military remnants thousands of miles away. Information is the precursor to action. If you know a threat is coming weeks before it arrives, you do not have to fight it. You can maneuver around it. This is the difference between reacting to a crisis and managing it. HF is the final layer of the shield, turning your isolated shelter into a node on a global map. You possess the hardware and the frequencies, but a stockpile of radios is not a network. It is merely a loot drop for the man who kills you. To survive, you must weld these distinct layers into a rigid doctrine of redundancy. In professional communication strategy, we operate by the PACE plan: primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. You will adopt this framework immediately, or you will find yourself screaming into a dead handset when the breach happens. This hierarchy is not a suggestion. It is the structural integrity of your group's survival. Your primary method is your daily driver, the system that balances security with operational ease. For the modern survivor cell, your primary is the LoRa mesh. It is silent, text-based, and persistent. It handles 90% of your logistics, water runs, perimeter checks, and resource tracking, without polluting the RF spectrum with voice signatures or revealing your location to direction-finding teams. It is the quiet hum of a functioning base. Your alternate is the backup engaged when the primary is jammed, broken, or out of range. This is your UHF-VHF simplex layer. It is faster than text, but infinitely more dangerous. You switch to this only when immediate, real-time coordination is required, such as during a firefight or a medical extraction where typing is impossible. You speak, you move, you shut it down. It is a tactical bridge, not a chat room. Your contingency is the layer you activate when the electronics fail, the batteries bleed out, or the EMP strikes. This is the physical and analog layer, the runner, the dead drop, the whistle, and the heliograph. When the screens go black, the contingency keeps the order of battle intact. If you have not drilled this layer while the lights were on, you will not be able to execute it in the dark. You must train your runners to memorize routes and your guards to recognize rhythm codes as strictly as you train them to shoot. Your emergency is the last resort. This is the Hail Mary protocol. When the unit is fractured, overrun, or isolated without hope of reconnection, you utilize HF-NVIS, or blind broadcasting on known international calling frequencies, to summon aid or signal your survival to the regional theater. You do this knowing it reveals your position to the entire world, friend and foe alike. It is a calculated gamble where the risk of exposure is outweighed only by the certainty of death. You are no longer a passive victim of the collapse. You are a signal officer in the war against entropy. Build your mesh, train your runners, cut your dipoles. Silence is your fortress, and your voice is your weapon. Use it sparingly. Use it wisely.